I never thought I would end up there. Everyone in our town knew about the old morgue, although officially it didn't even exist. The building was shut down back in the 90s, when a new one was opened nearby, and this one was left to rot on the outskirts. They said that for years it held the bodies of the homeless, the ones nobody came to claim. There were three of us going there. My childhood friends suggested it, just for the sake of curiosity, to take a look. I hesitated, but curiosity won. The path led through tall grass. Once there had been pavement here, but now it was nothing but waist-high weeds. The building looked like it was about to collapse. Black windows with no glass, rusty doors hanging on a chain, peeling plaster. Inside, the air was cold, even though it was summer outside. The smell, hard to describe. A mix of dampness, rot, and something unmistakable. That sickly sweet trace of death. We entered through a hole in the wall. The first thing that caught my eye were the metal tables. They were still there, the same ones where bodies had once been laid. Some had rust-colored stains, and I didn't even want to think about what they could have been. My friend shone his phone's light across the walls. Everything was covered in stains and mold. But in one of the rooms, I saw writing. With charcoal or maybe a burnt piece of wood, someone had scrawled on the wall, "Here lie the ones nobody claimed." It felt like the air inside tightened. At that very moment, we heard a sound, like someone had dropped a metal object somewhere farther down the hallway. We looked at each other, but no one joked or laughed. It didn't sound like something that had fallen on its own. We stood there in silence, and the quiet after that sound was even more suffocating than the noise itself. We still decided to go further. Turning back after that sound felt somehow shameful. Each of us was waiting for the other to be the first to say, "Let's get out of here." So we moved forward in silence. The corridor stretched on, narrow and long. Broken glass crunched under our feet. Imagine this. The light from our phones tore fragments of peeling walls out of the darkness, while ahead, only a black void. The farther we went, the harder it was to breathe. The air was stagnant, stale, and a strange heaviness started to pulse in my head. We peeked into one of the rooms. Inside stood several refrigeration chambers, huge metal doors, still bearing numbered plaques. Some locals used to say that this was where the unidentified bodies had been kept for years. One chamber was ajar. Inside, empty. But on the ceiling above the door, someone had drawn a cross in black marker. The cross was crooked, uneven, as if it had been scrawled in a rush. Suddenly, my friend, who was walking in front, stopped dead. His phone's beam was shining on the floor. I looked too, and there lay an old coat, white, hospital type, stained all over. Someone had clearly left it there long after the place was shut down, because the fabric hadn't disintegrated. It had only rotted with age. At that moment, we heard another sound, a dull, drawn-out scraping, as if someone was slowly dragging something heavy across metal. The sound came from the corridor behind us, the very direction we had just come from. We instinctively switched off our phones, stood in the darkness, barely breathing. The scraping went on for a few seconds, then stopped abruptly. In the silence, I felt for the first time just how hard my heart was pounding. We stood in the darkness, our eyes slowly adjusting. The only sound was our breathing. No one dared to speak. My friend was the first to turn his flashlight back on. He raised the beam upward, and we saw a mark on the ceiling. A long streak of rust, or maybe dried blood, stretched right above us. And just above that stain, scratched into the plaster, were the words, "Don't leave me here." My throat went dry instantly. The friend behind me whispered, "Guys, someone else is here." Almost in sync, we bolted back toward the exit, but the worst part waited for us in the hallway. Remember that coat lying on the floor? It had been pushed aside as if someone had just tripped over it, and in the dust there were fresh marks, not clear footprints, but trails as if something had been dragged along the floor. Panic hit at once. We didn't look back. We just ran, stumbling and crashing into crumbling pieces of wall. We burst outside through the same hole we'd entered. The air outside was stifling and dark, but at least it was air. We didn't stop until we reached the road. Only then, gasping for breath, did we realize no one inside had called out. No one had screamed. But the scraping sound, those marks and the words on the wall were far too real to have been just our fear. Since that day, I've never gone near that building again. And every night, when I remember that writing on the wall, I feel a chill. Because only one question keeps echoing in my head. Who exactly did they leave behind?